I'm 29 years old, and I'm married to my wonderful husband, Gary. We've been together for a long time, and our love has only grown stronger over the years. We celebrated our 4-year wedding anniversary earlier this year, and we're currently expecting our first child together. Our pregnancy journey has been an emotional and exciting one, full of highs, lows, and many precious moments. Gary and I first met in our early 20s. We were introduced through mutual friends, and though we started as just acquaintances, it didn't take long for us to realize there was something special between us. We became inseparable. We spent hours talking about everything, our hopes, dreams, and the future. We quickly became each other's best friends, and it didn't feel like we were dating but rather growing alongside one another. We knew we wanted to build a life together, so after a few years of being together, Gary proposed. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration of our love, shared with close family and friends. After marriage, we knew we wanted to start a family soon. We both loved the idea of raising children together, sharing the joys of parenting, and watching our little ones grow up with the same love and care we had for each other. We had talked about it for a while before trying to get pregnant. While some couples might feel a sense of anxiety or uncertainty during this phase, for us, the excitement outweighed any of those feelings. But we also understood that the process of conceiving could take time. We had no idea how long it might take, but we were patient and optimistic. We had been trying to get pregnant since last year, and as time passed, I started to feel a mix of emotions. There were moments of doubt, anxiety, and even frustration as the months went by with no results, but there was also a sense of hope and determination. We stayed positive, knowing that we would eventually be parents, even if it took longer than we expected. It was a journey we were committed to taking together. 6 months ago, we received the news we had been waiting for. I was pregnant. The joy we felt at that moment was indescribable. It felt like our dream had finally come true. I remember how Gary looked at me when we saw the positive test result. His face lit up with a smile that could have lit up a room. We hugged, laughed, and cried, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment. We couldn't wait to start this new chapter of our lives. Pregnancy, however, has been a roller coaster of emotions. In the beginning, I was filled with excitement and anticipation. But soon, the reality of the physical changes and the mental toll of being pregnant set in. I wasn't prepared for how much it would affect my body. The fatigue was intense, and the nausea seemed to have no end. There were days when getting out of bed felt like a monumental task. But through it all, Gary was there, by my side, supporting me every step of the way. Gary has been my rock throughout this entire journey. He has been so attentive and caring, always checking in on me and making sure I'm comfortable. He's been to every doctor's appointment with me, asking questions, taking notes, and making sure we are both on the same page. We have enjoyed reading parenting books together, discussing what kind of parents we want to be, and dreaming about the future of our family. I've never felt alone in this experience, and I'm so grateful to have him as my partner. One of the most beautiful moments in pregnancy has been when I started to feel our little one's first kicks. It's an indescribable feeling to know that there is a tiny life growing inside me, and to feel those little nudges and movements is a reminder of how much our baby is already a part of our lives. Gary has loved being able to feel the kicks too, and every time it happens, we both stop everything to marvel at the miracle of it all. We are now in full baby mode. Every day, we talk more and more about names, what our baby will be like, and what kind of future we want to give them. We've been decorating the nursery together, picking out baby clothes, and making plans for how we'll care for our little one when they arrive. The excitement in our home is palpable, and we feel like we're just a few short months away from holding our baby in our arms. We decided that, after reaching the important milestone of the first trimester, it was finally time to share our big news with our families. We wanted to make sure everything was okay before spreading the news. We didn't want to cause any unnecessary stress or worry, and we felt it was important to wait until we were certain everything was progressing well with the pregnancy. Once we passed that milestone and everything was clear, we couldn't wait to share the joy. We planned a family lunch to reveal the news, inviting our parents, close family members, and a few friends who we felt were particularly close to us. They arrived expecting a regular gathering, just a normal family lunch, but when they saw me and my growing belly, the mood immediately shifted. They could see the change in me, and the realization hit them all at once. The shock and joy were instant. My mom, who is always an emotional person, burst into tears the moment she saw me and recognized what was happening. She hugged me tightly, expressing her joy at the news. She understood why we had kept it a secret for so long, and she was thrilled to be becoming a grandmother. However, not everyone shared in the excitement. Gary's mother, Barbara, reacted very differently. While my mother was overcome with joy, Barbara's reaction was, to put it mildly, less than positive. As soon as she realized that we had been hiding the pregnancy from her, her face turned sour. She looked hurt, angry, and confused all at once. Instead of sharing in the joy of the announcement, she immediately started expressing her displeasure at not being informed sooner. She accused me, specifically me, of intentionally excluding her from the pregnancy news. I tried to explain, as calmly as I could, that Gary and I had made the decision together to wait until we were out of the first trimester to share the news. I explained that it was not about keeping it from her, but about being cautious, especially given how early it was in the pregnancy. I wanted to assure her that we weren't trying to hurt her, but her reaction only grew more intense. Barbara's anger seemed to cloud her ability to listen. She couldn't let go of her hurt feelings and continued to focus on how she felt left out, despite my attempts to explain the reason behind our decision. Her discontent was palpable. She made no effort to hide her frustration and quickly became distant from me. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, she barely spoke to me. She ignored me completely, and when she did speak, it was with sharp, dismissive words. She spent most of the time on her phone, avoiding eye contact, and avoiding any interaction with me. As the evening wore on, the tension between us only grew. Barbara's irritation was obvious, and the rest of the family began to notice. It wasn't just her treatment of me that was concerning. She also started behaving disrespectfully toward my mother. My mom, who had always tried to be kind and welcoming to Barbara, was now being ignored and disrespected. It felt like a deliberate snub, and I couldn't understand why Barbara was acting this way. Everyone else was trying to keep the atmosphere light and positive, but Barbara seemed determined to bring negativity to the gathering. At one point, I reached my breaking point. The strain of trying to stay calm and composed while my mother-in-law clearly disapproved of me became too much. I excused myself from the group and stepped outside for a moment, needing a break from the tension. My mom, who had noticed my distress, came outside to comfort me. She sat with me, talking gently, reassuring me, and reminding me that Barbara's behavior wasn't my fault. Her support was invaluable, and I slowly calmed down enough to return to the gathering. As the night drew to a close, Barbara's behavior took another turn. She deliberately waited until the very end to say goodbye to me, almost as if to make a point. Everyone else said their goodbyes in a more heartfelt manner, but Barbara's cold departure left me feeling unsettled. My husband, Gary, took his parents to the car, and I could hear the heated argument between him and his mother from inside the house. The argument was intense. I could hear Barbara yelling at Gary, accusing me of everything from being ungrateful to disrespectful. She couldn't understand why we'd kept the pregnancy from her, and in her eyes, I was the one who was responsible for this betrayal. Gary, trying to keep his composure, calmly explained that the decision was mutual and that it wasn't just my choice to keep it private, it was ours. But Barbara couldn't hear it. She kept escalating, pointing fingers, and blaming me entirely. It wasn't long before Gary lost his patience. He had been calm up until that point, trying to placate his mother and keep the peace. But hearing her continued accusations and attacks on me pushed him over the edge. His face turned red with anger as he firmly told her that if she was going to blame anyone, she should blame him too. He was done with the way she was treating me and told her to leave and cool off before she said something she would regret. As Barbara stormed out of the house, I could see Gary standing in the doorway, his shoulders tense, his face a mixture of frustration and regret. When he came back inside, he wrapped his arms around me and apologized for how his mother had treated me. He was genuinely sorry for how everything had played out, and I could tell it hurt him deeply to see his mother behaving this way. He reassured me that we would deal with the situation together. The weeks that followed the family lunch were a mix of excitement and stress. Gary and I were finally getting ready to welcome our baby into the world, and we couldn't be more thrilled. With everything that had happened between me and his mom, Barbara, I hoped things would settle down. We both agreed that we didn't want the negativity from the family overshadowing what should have been a joyful time. I tried to focus on the positives: our baby's health, the love and support we had from friends and family, and the excitement of preparing for our little one's arrival. However, despite my efforts to stay positive and keep the peace, Barbara's behavior was still on my mind. I couldn't ignore how uncomfortable and disrespectful she had been during the family lunch, and I had a sinking feeling that things wouldn't improve overnight. Gary and I had discussed the situation in the days after the gathering, but it still felt like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. It was only a few weeks later that the baby shower was planned. I had originally been excited about this event, envisioning a day filled with celebration, joy, and all the love and support we could ask for. My friends and family had been planning the event for months, making sure everything was perfect. From the decorations to the guest list, Everything was set to be a day I would remember forever. It was supposed to be a time for my closest loved ones to come together and celebrate the life we were about to bring into the world. The baby shower was scheduled to take place at one of my best friend's houses, and I was looking forward to a fun day. It wasn't going to be a huge party, just a casual gathering with close family and friends. We had some fun games planned, and the food was going to be delicious, simple but memorable. It was all supposed to be about bonding and excitement. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law had other plans. I knew there had been some tension between Barbara and me since the family lunch, but I honestly hoped that for the sake of the baby and the upcoming celebration, she would put our differences aside and be civil. I expected her to show up and maybe be a little distant, but I didn't anticipate the level of control she would try to exert over the event. When the day of the baby shower arrived, I was a bundle of emotions, excitement mixed with a bit of anxiety. I wanted everything to go well, but I also knew that the presence of Barbara might create a difficult dynamic. Still, I tried to push those concerns to the back of my mind and focused on the positive aspects: my friends, the fun games, the gifts, and the joy of celebrating this milestone in our lives. As the event kicked off, everything seemed to be going smoothly. My guests arrived, and the atmosphere was lighthearted. We had a great time eating, playing games, and chatting. Everyone was genuinely happy for Gary and me. But then, as if on cue, Barbara walked in, and things started to shift. She looked around the room, a strange look on her face, but she didn't make any overt moves to greet anyone immediately. Instead, she made a beeline for me. "Well, I have to say, I hope you're going to pick a proper name for the baby," Barbara announced, barely hiding the judgment in her tone. I was taken aback. I wasn't sure what had prompted her to speak like that, but I tried to keep my cool. I smiled politely and nodded. "Gary and I are still thinking about names, but we'll make a decision together." Barbara didn't seem to like my answer. Her face clouded over, and she stepped closer, her voice now rising slightly. No. You don't understand. I've been thinking about this for months, and I already know the perfect name. It would be an honor for me to name the baby, since I'm basically the one who raised Gary." She glanced around the room, clearly expecting some validation for her grand idea. I was stunned. This wasn't a casual suggestion. She was completely serious, and the assumption that she could just step in and take over this monumental decision felt almost disrespectful. As if it wasn't enough for her to have a strained relationship with me, now she was attempting to erase my role in this process entirely. I took a deep breath and tried to maintain my composure, remembering how important it was for Gary and me to make these decisions together. "Barbara, I understand that you're excited, but Gary and I want to pick the name together. This is a big decision for us, and we really want it to be something that represents both of us." Barbara's expression hardened. "Well, I'm just saying, as a mother-in-law, I've had a big hand in this baby's life too. You should at least consider my suggestion. It's only right." I was starting to feel frustrated, but I remained calm. "I appreciate your input, Barbara, but this is something that Gary and I need to decide. We're both excited about it, and we'll let you know once we've made a decision." Barbara's response was immediate and harsh. "If you were a good daughter-in-law, you'd listen to me," she snapped. "After all I've done for you, this is the least you could do?" The comment stung, and I felt my patience thinning. I looked over at Gary, who had been talking to some of his relatives, and he was now watching the exchange unfold. He seemed uneasy, but I didn't want to involve him yet. I wanted to handle it myself, so I took a deep breath and tried to defuse the situation. "Barbara, I really don't think this is the right time or place for this conversation," I said, my voice steady but firm. "This is a celebration, and I don't want to fight with you." But Barbara wasn't listening. She was on a roll now. "No, you're the one making this difficult. You've ruined so many things already. First, you kept the pregnancy a secret for months. And now, you won't even let me contribute to the baby's life by naming them. You've been so ungrateful." The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel the eyes of everyone around us as they grew more and more uncomfortable. I didn't want to make a scene, but Barbara wasn't letting up. She continued to point at me, berating me in front of everyone, her words becoming increasingly hurtful. "You don't know what family is. You're acting like you don't even care about the people who have been here for you. My son, your husband, he's the one who's going to be a father, and you're treating me like I don't matter," she continued, her voice rising with each word. It wasn't long before she was shouting. Her words were directed at me, but they felt like an attack on everything I stood for as a wife, a mother-to-be, and a person. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the sting of her words cutting deep, despite how much I tried to brush them off. I glanced at my mom, who was standing nearby. She had been trying to remain neutral, but even she could see that things were getting out of hand. She stepped toward Barbara, hoping to de-escalate the situation. "Barbara, that's enough," my mom said gently, placing her hand on Barbara's arm in an attempt to calm her down. "This isn't the time for this. Let's just enjoy the shower, okay?" Barbara looked at my mom and then jerked her arm away, pushing her aside. "You don't get to tell me what to do," she sneered. "I'm the one who gave birth to Gary. I have every right to be part of this." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as I watched the scene unfold. My mom moved in front of me, as if shielding me from Barbara's rage. "Please, let's just take a breath," she said softly. "No one is disrespecting you, Barbara, but you have to stop attacking my daughter. It's not helping anyone." But Barbara wasn't hearing any of it. She was far too gone, her anger blinding her to reason. I could feel the heat of her anger radiating off of her as she moved closer, now standing just inches from my face. Her breath smelled of alcohol, and her words became slurred as she pointed directly at me. "You're not even the real mommy," she spat. "I gave birth to Gary. It's his sperm that created this baby. That makes me the real mother."
"Not you."
Her words felt like a slap across the face. I didn't even know how to respond. It was beyond ridiculous, beyond cruel. It was also dangerous. My baby, who I had carried for months, wasn't some object to be argued over like a toy. She was trying to rewrite our entire family dynamic in a single moment, trying to erase my role as a mother before my baby had even been born. At this point, I was no longer worried about keeping the peace. I felt physically and emotionally drained, and I realized that the situation had escalated to a point where I needed to take action. I walked toward the door, gathering my strength. I couldn't stay in that environment any longer. I needed space, and I needed to remove myself from the toxicity. As I reached the door, Barbara suddenly lunged toward me. I froze for a moment, caught off guard by her sudden movement. She grabbed the gift bags from my hands, yanking them back with surprising strength. "Where do you think you're going?" Barbara snapped, her voice laced with anger. "You can't just leave like this after everything I've done for you." I could feel my frustration building, but I remained as calm as I could. "Barbara, please stop. You're causing a scene. Let go of my things." But she wasn't listening. Instead, she continued pulling on the bags, shaking her head. "You're being ungrateful. You don't appreciate what I've done for you or for this baby." It was clear to me that no matter what I said, nothing was going to make her back down. I knew I had to leave, but now I felt trapped in this intense confrontation. In that moment, I decided it was time to take control. "I'm done," I said firmly. "I've had enough of this." With a quick motion, I turned and tried to step out, but Barbara quickly moved to block the door, standing in my way. "You're not going anywhere," she said, voice shaking with emotion. "You need to listen to me." I felt a wave of anxiety, but I refused to let it show. "I am leaving."
"Now?"
At that moment, I knew I couldn't let this escalate any further. I needed to get out of there, but Barbara's behavior was becoming more erratic by the second. After Barbara's outburst at the baby shower, things spiraled quickly. As I walked out of that toxic scene with my friends, my mind was racing. I had never imagined things could get this bad. I had hoped for a joyful, peaceful celebration of the life we were bringing into the world, not an emotionally charged confrontation. But here we were. Gary and I made a pact that night. This wasn't just about a disastrous baby shower. It was about the constant control, manipulation, and disrespect I'd endured from Barbara for far too long. It was about putting our baby's future first and creating a safe, healthy environment for them to grow up in. Gary took immediate action. The next day, he called his mother, and though it was hard for him, he set clear, firm boundaries with her. He told her that not only was she not welcome in our lives anymore, but that she had crossed a line that could not be undone. She had ruined the celebration, humiliated me, and, worst of all, threatened the peace of our family. Barbara's response was everything we'd feared: anger and denial. She tried to play the victim, accusing me of being unreasonable and of making her feel unappreciated. But Gary wasn't having it. He told her that the damage she had done was beyond repair. The more she begged, the more resolute he became. The phone call ended with Barbara in tears, but this time, Gary was unwavering. Days passed. The tension was thick, and even though the storm had calmed in our home, it was far from over. Barbara reached out through texts and voicemails, sending messages of guilt trips and manipulative pleas. At one point, she even showed up at our doorstep, demanding to make things right. But Gary was firm. He told her that if she ever tried to force her way into our lives again, we would be forced to get a restraining order. It was the hardest conversation he'd ever had to have with his mother, but it was also one of the most necessary. Barbara's pride couldn't handle the rejection. She began reaching out to family members, trying to paint me as the villain. She sent out messages, twisting the narrative, making her out to be the hurt grandmother who was only trying to help. But the people who mattered, my parents, Gary's siblings who saw what had really happened, stood by us. They shared the videos of her outrageous behavior at the baby shower, and soon, those who had been on the fence started to see the truth. Barbara was isolated. Family members distanced themselves from her, some even refusing to speak to her. The gossip began to spread, and the more she tried to explain herself, the more her true nature was exposed. No one wanted to be around someone who used manipulation and control to get her way, especially at such a fragile, joyous moment. Months passed, and while I focused on the health and safety of my pregnancy, Barbara became a distant memory. She lost friends, her reputation tarnished, and her relationship with Gary's father grew cold as well. As the family slowly but surely distanced themselves from her, Barbara found herself alone. There were no more birthday calls, no more family gatherings, and no more invites to holidays. But the best part? Gary and I were stronger than ever. With the birth of our baby drawing near, we made sure to surround ourselves with people who truly loved and supported us. We threw a small, intimate celebration for our child, just the way we'd wanted, without the toxic weight of Barbara's influence. My parents were there, of course, along with our closest friends. It was everything we'd imagined, a celebration of new beginnings, love, and family. As for Barbara, she was left to deal with the consequences of her actions. No one stood by her. No one offered their sympathy. It wasn't long before she realized that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, love, and mutual understanding. She learned this lesson the hard way, and the truth was, she would never be able to undo the damage she had done. Gary's relationship with his mother had changed forever. While he didn't cut her off completely, he made it clear that things would never go back to how they were. He told her, without hesitation, that until she took full accountability for her behavior and worked on herself, she wouldn't be welcome in our lives, or our child's life. And for once, she had no choice but to listen. In the end, the best revenge wasn't in her suffering, but in our happiness. We had created the family we wanted, free of toxicity, free of manipulation. Our baby was born into a world where love and kindness were the foundations of everything we did. And that was more than enough. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell to stay updated.